Lord, I ask for wisdom and guidance for this board and the staff as we prepare to conduct the business before us, and always in your precious Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Today, the meeting is available on our YouTube link, and it's being filmed right now. So just remember that, guys. You're on camera. The other thing is if you want to go and you need to get connected to our YouTube link, you can go to www.myswaneriver.com. And Troy, I'm going to invite you to come up and read the public comment. We're going to start that right now. I'm going to let you do. Yes, ma'am. Roll call. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Robin?
Ms. Johns, Mr. Keith,
Here.
Mr. Schwab,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Sessions,
Here.
Mr. Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Lloyd.
Here.
Thank you very much, Robin. As you can see, Chairman Johns is out today. She's a little under the weather, so if you guys think about her and your little thoughts and prayers, that'd be great. And she's going to be sorely missed because, unfortunately, you had to struggle with me being here. And if I'm a little bit too fast, it might be because I've had 3 Mountain Dew. No, I might be, a little bit quicker than what we normally would. So if I need to slow down a little bit, Mr. Thomas, you can slow me down. Council, you have that permission as well. Is there any announcements or any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Robin. All right, so now we're going to ease on into public comment. And Troy, I'm going to invite you to come to the podium and read the public comment that we've received by email. And then, Mr. Hill, you'll be next.
Good morning, Chairman Schwab, members of the board. This is a letter that we received from the Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District. Bear with me, there are a lot of acronyms in here, so I may stumble over those. But the BSWCD is requesting the following be read as public comment at the April 9th, 2024 Swanee River Water Management District Governing Board meeting. The BSWCD is very concerned about the SRWMD staff response to our request for SRWMD staff to attend a BSWCD meeting to discuss our concerns about SRWMD actions and property in Bradford County. The text of the BSWCD request and SRWMD staff response are included after the following comments. 8 of the highest crests recorded for the Alligator Creek water level gauge have been recorded after the completion of the Edwards Bottomlands project. This may indicate the Edwards Bottomlands project is causing significant reduction in flows in Alligator Creek, which could significantly impact flooding in Stark during and after significant rain events. Failure to address this issue puts area residents' lives and properties at unnecessary risks. The Camorras Trail Ridge South Mine on SRWMD property in Bradford County has reported an exceedance of permitted radium levels in its industrial wastewater discharges during April 20 of 2023 and a 194,195 gallon release of processed water onto SRWMD property and North Florida Land Trust property on January 1st, 2024. The radium content of the processed water discharge was not provided. The BSWCD is concerned about the potential contamination of the 2 properties with radium, a radioactive element. The January 31st, 2024 discharge also raises concerns about the containment berms that were to be constructed to contain mine contact stormwater. Could a significant rain event also cause a berm failure and the release of stormwater and processed water? The Camorras reclamation work on SRWMD property south of Laudy on County Road 225 that can be seen from County Road 225 raises the following questions. Do the elevated areas visible from CR 225 represent pre-mining elevations? Does the large area of rocked surface visible from CR 225 represent pre-mining conditions? Why has the site not been seeded to prevent erosion? And how much water is currently being pumped out of the site at the south end of the West Levee? Now, I have also been asked to read our responses to this. We have responded to some of their questions here. Regarding the Edwards Bottomland project, our response was the district is committed and continues to prioritize activities that ensure compliance with this permit. For the Camorras Trail Ridge South mining operations on our property, It is the district's understanding that the Comores Trail Ridge South mining operations on SRWMD property are active. The regulatory agency is DEP, and the permit number is MMR 137482-018. The district suggests contacting Comores or FDEP for a more in-depth update. And finally, for the Comores reclamation work on SRWMD property south of Lawdy on County Road 225, it is the district's understanding that Comores reclamation work on SRWMD property south of Lawdy on County Road 225 is ongoing. The regulatory agency is DEP, and the permit number is MMR 137482-015. The district suggests contacting Comores or FDEP for a more in-depth update. And if you have any questions, I'm going to suggest Mr. Marshall might be able to answer those, but
Any questions from the board?
Has staff viewed any of this, or are we just going by email?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure of the question. Could you?
Has staff been out to Edwards Bottomland and viewed, are we taking on materials from the mine?
Yes, sir. Our land management staff has gone out there. They perform periodic inspections out there. I would have to turn it over to Caitlin's or the land management staff to answer any specific questions about what's happening on the site, but there are inspections happening periodically on the site.
Have we noticed anything out of the ordinary?
Yes, ma'am.
Keith, we have not, our goal from the land management perspective is to treat the invasive and exotics to meet the minimal conditions of the permit that we have. We're working with the Leroy team, and our contractors are getting geared up to start out there to treat the invasive and exotics, which, as you, the board may remember, Bradford County is a pretty high feed bank for invasive and exotic. That's the bulk of where our issues are, so it's not just specific to Edwards Bottomland. Most of our lands in that area. So regarding that specific part of the project, yes, sir, we're out there, we're looking at it. We're trying to meet the conditions of.
Okay, one final question then. Have we forwarded this email and their concerns to DEP?
I don't, Mr.
Yes, sir.
I don't, we have not forwarded their concerns. I believe they were copied. I can make sure. If we haven't, I will make sure that they get it.
I would suggest that we do.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to Leroy's comments on that. Mr. Charles, we have been in contact with DEP relative to the discharge that are referenced in the comments here. And DEP's response back on that is that the radium levels that are recognized here within the comments were below the detection limits and levels of concern.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All I had.
Anything else? Thank you very much for the comments. Appreciate it, Troy. Mr. Hill, floor is yours.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm Jeffrey Hill. I live in Columbia County, Florida. There's a long controversy between my family and I and the district. This board, about 10 years ago, approved to pay me for my irrigation pipe your staff ran over and crushed. I have not been paid for the pipe. Also, my grandson says he saw the Honorable Mr. Larry K. Thompson on last meeting's YouTube version say that the district's legal actions are disruptive and frivolous in our controversy. My family and I are very happy to find a board member so perceptive and on our side. Further, the Honorable Mr. Larry K. Thompson asked at the meeting when our controversy would end. The answer is plain and simple. It will end when district pays for the property it takes in public safety endeavors. 7 years ago, in April 2017, the appeals court said you must pay for property you take. Thank you for your attention.
You, Mr. Hill. All right, moving on. There's no other public comments at this time. So I'm going to move into the consent agenda. All of us have had a chance to read the agenda and everything that was presented to us before the meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, if that's the pleasure of the board.
So moved. Motion.
All right, I have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the matter? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to item number 7 then, to items of general interest and information of cooperating agencies and organizations. Hugh, did we want to mention right now the group? Yes, sir, please.
With the hydrologic conditions report, as well.
Yes, sir. Robbie, are you ready to go? Yeah, let's do that first, and then, I'm sorry, moving things around. I apologize about that. Yeah, no, we're gonna roll the way Robin has it printed out here.
Perfect. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Great to see you guys again. I'm here to present the hydrologic conditions report for March 2024. I wanted to start off with this great photo sent to me by Stephanie Armstrong of the Wasissa River. She was out in Jefferson County doing some site visits, and she stepped in and snapped this photo for me. I think it's a beautiful system. If you haven't had a chance to take a kayak or canoe out there, there's all kinds of great wildlife, beautiful plants, things like that out there. Some of the biggest gators I've seen around the district are out there too, so you got to kind of be a little careful, but it's a beautiful place. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. My thanks goes to Stephanie. I think it's a great photo, and it's a great way to start our hydro report for March 2024. Rainfall for March 2024, we had a district-wide average right about 4.8 inches. That's about 8% higher than that long-term average of 4.4 inches. We did increase our surplus. We went from 4.7 inches at the end of February to 5.3 inches at the end of March, just by moving that window over. We picked up a little bit more rainfall in March 2024 than we had in March 2023. Looking at the map here, the district-wide average, that 4.8 inches, is roughly included in that green area. And this is kind of interesting because it was very similar to last month. We have the top 2/3 of the district kind of show average or higher amounts of rainfall, whereas the lower amounts, the 3 to 4 inch range in the blue, and then the light blue, the less than 3 inches, we see a lot of that down in the southern third of the district, Levy County up through Alachua into Bradford County. Do have some pockets of it up in Baker, Suwannee, Columbia, and Lafayette, and down into Dixie as well. It's the higher end rainfall, 5 to 6 inches in orange and 6 to 7 inches in red. You see, once again, we see a lot of those in this upper portion of our district. And then we did have some areas of more than 7 inches of rainfall, and that's in that pink color. See quite a bit of that over in Jefferson County. Hamilton County, I think, got about the lion's share of it, a little bit in North Suwannee, and then over into Columbia, Union, and Baker counties, kind of right on the county lines there. They all enjoyed more than 7 inches of rainfall this past month, and that's in that pink color. Our biggest rainfall maker of the month came at the end of the month, actually on the 27th and 28th. That was a Tuesday and Wednesday, just a few weeks back. We got a district-wide average of 1.5 inches or 1.5 inches around the district. So very similar picture here that we just saw. Not a whole lot of rainfall in the southern part, but most of it kind of concentrated in the upper third to 2/3 of our district. Higher end rainfall, we got 2 to 2.5 inches in red, and then more than 2.5 inches in that 2-day period in the pink color. Taylor County over into Madison, Lafayette, Suwannee up into Hamilton County. Just kind of how that pattern came through, and I think it was a cold front that came through that dropped a whole bunch of rain in that area. So just kind of an interesting look at that 2-day window, which that I forgot to mention that 1.5 inches is roughly about 30% of our total for the month. So we got that in 2 days. This is our 30-day departure from precipitation. This is from the National Weather Service. Interestingly, our district is looking good compared to Peninsula Florida and Panhandle Florida. We're enjoying surpluses anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1 inch of surplus in light green. Dark green is 1 to 2 inches of surplus. 2 to 3 inches of surplus in that blue color, and then do see some areas up in Hamilton County where they got quite a bit of rainfall we're seeing some 3 to 4 inches of surplus. We did have some areas of deficit in our district. It's a 1/2 inch to 1 inch in light yellow, a little bit over that in Jefferson County up into Madison County. Levy County did see some as well, upwards of 1 to 2 inches in that lighter yellow as well. But all in all, our district looking really good with those little frontal boundaries that we have coming through our area this winter. Stream flow conditions for March 2024 looking really good at the end of March. This was ending March 31st. Most of our rivers were in the normal range, the 25th to 75th percentile, with a couple of exceptions in our district. Withlacoochee at Panetta and Alapaha at Jennings both ended in the above normal, the 75th to 90th. And that's due to some of the increase in rainfall that we had up in that area. We're starting to see some elevated flows and levels around our rivers now. A lot of that runoff is starting to come down in our district. But also South Georgia saw Alapaha at Statenville with above normal flows. And the Ocklawackee at Thomasville, Little River, and Withlacoochee Equipment all began the month in below normal, the 10th to 25th percentile, but jumped up into either the above normal or the high, the greater than 90th percentile, as did the Alapaha at Alapaha. It jumped up into that greater than 90th percentile as well. Upper Florida aquifer levels, this is for the end of February. I showed this at the last board meeting. I want to do this as a comparison for this month. What we were seeing last month due to below average rainfall in February, a lot of our wells were trending downward, but we still did have some areas of greater than or above 90th percentile well levels in Taylor County, Madison County, up into Hamilton County, Bradford County as well. We did still see a lot of our counties that still had 75th to 90th percentile wells, and that's in that lighter blue color, pretty much all over the district. We did have this little swath through the center part of the district up to Suwannee County, down into Levy County, and even over into Jefferson County and South Taylor County had a well that were all in the normal range, that 25th to 75th percentile. Fast forward 1 month, pretty similar picture here. However, we do have a lot more wells trending upward, and that's due to that increase in rainfall we had there toward the end of the month. More areas of the above 90th percentile now stretching into Jefferson County. Lafayette County's got a couple wells there. Gilchrist County, of course. Hamilton County, and then Baker County, I believe, had a couple of wells. And then over into Bradford, all showed above 90th percentile in their well levels. Still do have a big area of 75th to 90th. Pretty much every county in our district showing at least one well with that 75th to 90th. And we do still have this area of normal conditions through the kind of center down to the south of our district, and then over into the South Taylor and then southern Jefferson County as well. This is U.S. Drought Monitor. This was released last Thursday, April 4th. Really nothing to see in our district at all, and that's to be expected with our groundwater levels and the rainfall that we've enjoyed. The only issue that in Florida in general is just the abnormally dry down around the Tampa Bay area. I did want to mention that we are still under an El Nino advisory. That is actually just about on the tail end. So we're going to switch over into those El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions. That's coming up between April and June. That's about an 83% chance. So we're going to switch over into those neutral conditions. But right on the heels of that, we're probably going to go right into a La Nina, and that's from June to August, and that's about a 62% chance of happening. So it's going to be a kind of a consecutive thing: El Nino, neutral, and then right into La Nina. So we'll see that probably just in time for hurricane season. This is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration seasonal outlook. This is for April through June. They're still showing that we're going to have above normal rainfall probabilities in most of the southern United States as well. I think that's still part of that El Nino that we're just getting outside of right now. And then above normal temperature probabilities. This is kind of first time I've said this in a little bit. Most of the United States is going to see above normal in the next 3 months from April through June as well. Never too soon to start talking about hurricane season. Colorado State University released their predictions for hurricane season on April 4th. Over on the left is the 1991 to 2020 averages, and then their predictions are over here on the right. We'll go through a few of those. Named storms 14, they're predicting 23. Hurricanes 7 on average, they're predicting 11. And major hurricanes 3, they're predicting 5. So they're calling for an above average hurricane season for the 2022 Atlantic season. It's one of those things you can look at it like it's the college football rankings. Things will change. But right now, this is kind of what they're saying. The National Hurricane Center should be coming out with their predictions mid next month, and I'll present that at the board as well. All right, finally, March 2024 summary, we had a rainfall amount of about 4.8 inches, represents about an 8% higher amount than the long-term average of 4.4 inches. We had a district-wide rainfall surplus that went up from 4.6 inches at the end of February to 5.3 inches at the end of March. District-wide upper Florida and aquifer levels actually rose slightly from the 80th percentile in February to the 81st percentile at the end of March. And we had a median level increase across our monitored wells of about 0.2 of a foot. Transition to El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions are likely from April through June with about an 83% chance of happening and a 62% chance just right after that going into a La Nina from June to August. And as I mentioned, there is no portion of the district currently experiencing any drought conditions. I don't expect for that to change this week. We do have some rain forecast, I believe tomorrow or Thursday, and so we will probably stay about the same that we are now. Finally, Colorado State University predicts an above average 2024 Atlantic hurricane season for us this coming season. Mr. Chair, with that, I'll take any questions the board may have.
Any questions?
No, just a comment. It's great, great report other than that last one. Hopefully we don't have those excess hurricane
Yes, sir.
activity.
I absolutely agree with you. That's why I wanted to say it's a little bit like the college football preseason polls. You don't know until we get into it. So it could be this time last year, they said it was going to be slightly below. That didn't work out, so they upped their prediction. So things can change, but that's kind of their shot in the dark at this point.
I've been personally, I've been waiting for that neutral condition to get here. I thought it was going to come in February, hopefully, but it's wet. It's wet everywhere.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, Mr. Thomas, if you'll do cooperating agencies and organizations.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Would like to recognize that we do have Chris Wynn here with us from FWC this morning, and always appreciate his attendance. We also have several members in the audience that are here on behalf of item 17, which is our environmental engineering services, the RFQ that we put out and the selection of approval of that by the board today. One of the special items that we've got is item 24, which is a proclamation by the district for the cooperative work that the Swanee Bicycle Association does. And we do have 3 representatives here. This morning, we have a Mr. Dale Nanny, who is the president of the association there, and Mr. Mike Kelly, who's the vice president, and then his wife, Nancy, who serves as a membership coordinator. And they'll be more than welcome to speak now or whenever the item comes up later in the agenda. Lorna will be presenting that proclamation.
Do you guys want to speak now, or do you want to? I know normally presidents of associations like to, speak. No, if you want to wait till it's proclaimed, it doesn't matter. Would you rather wait? Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. Mr. Reeves.
Just have one thing. A couple meetings back, the board had authorized the filing of a complaint against Mr. Creasy for some like well activity. We authorized the filing of an administrative complaint. Ordinarily, an administrative complaint would include fines, penalties, attorney's fees, all of that. Mr. Creasy, though, has declared bankruptcy. And so rather than filing an administrative complaint seeking fines and attorney's fees, and there's monetary penalties, we filed a complaint in circuit court seeking an injunction to enjoin him from engaging in unlicensed well contracting in the future. When someone who is subject to environmental enforcement, when they file bankruptcy, we are allowed to pursue and get a judgment for those monetary penalties, but you can't let them collect on that judgment other than going through the bankruptcy court and trying to get establish a priority in those bankruptcy proceedings. Normally, that's not very productive, and so that's why we decided not to pursue that. The thought being it would cost more in attorney's fees and costs and all of that. So anyway, we have gone ahead and filed it. It's a circuit court action seeking an injunction, and we'll let you know how that proceeds.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, sir, not unless y'all have questions.
You have any questions? Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. All right. Next thing on the agenda is our legislative update. or actually, I'm sorry, Business and Community Services, Tim?
Chair Schwab, members of the board, those in attendance, good morning. For Business and Community Services, you'll find items number 9 through 19 on today's agenda. Item number 9 under the Office of Administration, this item will be presented by our Legislative and Government Affairs Coordinator, Mr. Tyler Winburn. Follow that, we have item number 10 under the Department of Finance, which was approved on the consent agenda. For the Resource Management Office, we have items number 11 and 12. Item number 11 is an informational item, and item number 12 was also approved on the consent. And then finally, we'll have the Agriculture Environmental Projects. Items number 13, 14, and 15 will be presented by Leroy Marshall. And the remaining items, items number 16 through 19, were approved on way of consent. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Tyler?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. I'm Tyler Winburn. I'm the Legislative and Government Affairs Coordinator. I'm going to give us a quick review on the legislative session for 2024. First things were confirmations. This cycle, our Executive Director, Mr. Thomas, Vice Chair, Mr. Schwab, and Mr. Lloyd, a board member, were all up for confirmation. They went through the application process, went through the committee process, and arrived at the Senate floor where they received unanimous support for their confirmation. So we'll get to continue to enjoy their services to the district. Session by the numbers. This session saw 1,957 bills filed by the legislature. Those bills received 2,196 amendments. Ultimately, 325 of those bills were passed by both chambers and presented to the governor. That's about 25 to 30 bills less than last year. The governor also received a $117.46 billion budget, which is about $1 billion more than last year's budget. There were 7 bills of interest to the district that passed. The first one was House Bill 149. This bill deals with continuing contracts, and it increased the upper limit for continuing contracts from $4.5 million from $4 million to $7.5 million. The next bill of interest was House Bill 1049, flood disclosures in the sale of real property. This deals with residential real property sales, and it creates a duty for the seller of real property to disclose if there had ever been any flood damage, that homeowners insurance does not cover flood damage, and they also had to disclose if they ever got any FEMA money or made any claims for flood damages. So this will put buyers of real property in the district on notice of potential flooding and past flooding. Senate Bill 1136 is the regulation of water resources. This is the bill that deals with well water contractors. It creates 3 new things in the world of well water contracting. The first thing is it makes the requirements to test for a license. Your experience, where before your experience could be anywhere in the U.S., your experience now has to be in Florida in order to apply and sit for the examination. The bill also authorizes the Water Management District to delegate enforcement powers to counties if they choose to. They don't have to. And the bill adds that in order to advertise for well water drilling services, either the owner of the company must have a license or they must have a full-time person employed that has a license. The next bill of interest is Senate Bill 1532. This deals with mitigation banks. This bill expands who can create mitigation banks, and it allows in limited use for local government lands that are owned by the government to partner with private people to create mitigation banks. These banks have to be in credit deficient areas. This does not include district lands. District lands were specifically excluded from these partnerships. It also allows these local governments to sell credits, whereas before they could only sell to other government entities. Now they can sell to private entities. House Bill 1557 is DEP's package bill. This bill deals with a lot of things from wastewater treatment facilities to sea level rise plans, 20 and 50-year plans. But the only thing that it creates for the Water Management District at this point directly is that we have to create new rules to promote the reuse of reclaimed water by December 31st, 2025. House Bill 7013 deals with all special districts, and this creates reporting requirements for transparency for all special districts. We're included in those special districts. Fortunately, we already meet all of the standards that this bill requires of us through other things like our consolidated annual report. So it just brings all those special districts up to the requirements that we already have. The only thing we have to do in addition to what we've been doing is we have to send those reports now to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And the final bill of interest is the ratification of DEP's protection rules relating to stormwater. This is a much anticipated bill. It was several years in the works. And its highlights are that it creates new minimum performance standards for stormwater systems. It has new requirements for how much of the nutrient loads captured within those systems. It requires applicants to demonstrate through modeling to get their permits to determine local runoff and other things. And it creates a requirement for periodic inspections and the operation of the stormwater system. And it provides new permitting criteria for the construction of new and existing dams. Next is appropriations. All the appropriations in this slide still subject to the line item veto of the governor. The governor has not approved this yet. But the district received $6.5 million in their recurring appropriations. That's $2.2 million for operations, almost $500,000 for ERP, $1.7 million for land management, $1.6 million for minimum flows and levels, and $352,000 for payment in lieu of taxes. This is identical to last year's number. In addition to the recurring appropriation, the district received $2.5 million for a non-recurring appropriation for external facilities renovations. So we'll get to do some much overdue work onto the buildings. Statewide, there are several water projects that are funded at the state level that are going to take place within our district. Columbia County is going to receive $325,000 subject to the line item veto for well redundancy in Ellisville. Dixie County is receiving $1.5 million for their phase 2 for their stormwater mitigation. Cedar Key is receiving $2.5 million for their lift station phase 2 for water and sewage district. Fort White's getting infrastructure improvement $1 million. The town of Hampton is receiving $550,000 for well water and equipment replacement. Lee's getting $400,000 for water line replacement. Town of Newberry is getting $500,000 for a regional wastewater treatment facility. Stark Bypass Economic Development is getting $550,000 for their corridor project. And then the Suwannee County Industrial Complex is receiving a total of $2.1 million for elevated water tank and a sewer plant. Some statewide appropriations of interest. The alternative water supply received $55 million in the state budget this year. Springs funding also got $55 million. Flood and sea level rise programs received $125 million, and then there were $536 million in a new appropriation through the Indian Gaming Revenue Trust Fund. And all of this money is dedicated to environmental resource management. It's going to be given to several different agencies and several different grant programs, but all for resource management. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, having gone through all that, Tyler, what is your opinion? How did we fare through all that? I mean, is it provide more? Is it more regulation and more burden on the district, or is it a? In some ways, there is more regulation. So with the stormwater rules, there's going to be more work to be done there. They've created those continuing requirements for inspection to make sure the systems are working. So there's going to be a little more work there, a little more regulation there. I don't know if anything was deregulated this cycle. So just with that, there's more regulation than there was.
And there's area funding, assuming they don't get line item vetoed, but of those funding requests, is that a norm there? Is that about what it's been being, or is that?
As far as the statewide appropriations?
No, back to our local area projects. No, the next slide back.
I think that's normal. everybody puts in their request, and so 10 of them were within our region. I think that lines up normally.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tyler? Just one quick question for you, sir. Yeah, I know you spend a lot of time in Tallahassee. Is that right?
That's right. During the session, yes, sir.
Yeah, and then do you have an office here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does Robin give you a name tag?
He did give me a name tag.
Okay, I was just wondering. I didn't see it on.
She gave me 2 of them,
She
actually.
did.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, just to clarify, maybe the next time have a name tag on, we can know who you are.
I can wear them both if you'd like.
No, just one would be fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I don't have a name.
I noticed that too, but I know who you are, Leroy.
Good morning. I'm going to be doing the next 2 items. Item 14 is in regards to the engineering and environmental services request for qualifications. The district has several programs to support its mission to ensure the sustainable use and protection of water resources and the benefit of the people of the district. That mission is supported by different agents, different offices in the district. Each of those offices have specific tasks that they do throughout the year, and the need for additional support through outside expertise or to help complete different projects is needed by those offices. So the district has completed a RFQ for engineering and environmental services throughout the entire district. That RFQ went out on December 1st, 2023, requesting the respondents provide information on tasks that were separated into chapters. You can see the different chapters there. Basically, each office has their own chapter, pretty much, where they were able to list all the tasks and activities they would like the engineering environmental services consultants to provide in that chapter. We had 47 applications received this time, and it is our intention to go into contract with all 47. Tyler, if you could scroll to the chart. So what you're looking at here are the different chapters that were in the RFQ and the list of consultants that qualified under each one of those chapters. Each consultant responded into the chapter they felt they could perform the work in. And so what you're looking at is a list of the consultants ranked for each one of the chapters. I believe we had 20 new consultants that applied, that submitted through the RFQ this time, and that is why the number is up to 47 submittals this time. You go back to the memo. Thank you, Tyler. So therefore, the recommendation is to approve the list of qualified engineering and environmental firms and authorize the executive director to enter into contracts with each firm.
What's the pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Just one, go ahead.
Just one question. Well, first comment, it's an impressive list. That's always good to have that level of competition available to us. But is there any logic in the order of the firms on the list?
Yes, sir.
They're ranked in order from one to whatever, because they're different for each chapter.
Very good. Thank you.
I think that answers my question. So if the district needed the services in one of these areas, the one on the top would be the one that the district would go to first?
So each chapter had a different task in each one of the chapters. Every consultant that's submitted in that chapter may not do every one of those tasks. And so what the office chief or whoever the project manager would do would be to look in the chapter to see which one of those consultants actually did that task or whatever task they need, and they would pick the most qualified out of that and then move forward through the selection of that consultant.
Okay, but if I understand the question, they're ranked according to they're ranked, the number one at the top of the chart is the best for that particular task? Or is that not the case?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The number one ranked is the best overall for that chapter. They, again, may not have done everything in that chapter. So, for instance, I know that there was a grant writing consultant that was in there. They did not do a lot of the other tasks. They only did grant writing. So even though they may be in there, and we had other engineering tasks, they would not be qualified for that because they don't do that. So even if they scored above an engineer in the ranking, we may not go to them because they don't do that task. And so you have to kind of, look at what each one of the consultants listed as a task that they were able to provide, and then go through the ranking at that way.
Okay. But if you needed a grant writer, that'd be the one you'd go to, right?
I think a couple of the other ones did grant writing as well. So
Yeah, but if he ranked the highest in grant writing, that would probably be the one you would go to first for that particular situation, right?
if that was what you were looking for, yes.
Yeah, okay. No other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I could add.
Yes, sir.
As well to Mr. Thompson's question. And with that, Mr. Thompson, then you would move into the price negotiation, would be the next phase. This simply shows that they're qualified to do the work. And then depending upon what the work is that the district needs, we would then negotiate price with that company on there.
Good.
Any other questions? I personally want to say I appreciate all the engineering groups that applied for the process, and thank you very much for your time. I know I personally have done some of that kind of work for other folks, and it takes a lot to do all that. And I appreciate your effort. And glad you guys want to do business with us. Thank you. And if there's some feedback on y'all's end that would make the process easier, let us know. We want to do what's best for the industry and helping us achieve our goals, but also what's good for you guys as well. But thank you very much. Leroy, we have a motion on the table, and we've had a second. We've had discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, sign like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
The next item on the agenda is a task work assignment with WSP for Brooks Sink Phase 2. In 2015, the district partnered with Rayonier to complete Phase 1 of the Brooks Sink project. In that project, we installed a structure in order to divert water into Brooks Sink in order to get more water into the aquifer. So what we're planning on doing now in Phase 2 is to add an additional drainage basin into the sink. Tyler, if you could go to the slide, wanted to let everyone have an idea of where Brooks Sink is located. What you're looking at in the top right corner is Stark. And then as you look over to the red circle, that is where Brooks Sink is located. It's in Bradford County. What you're looking at here is a more closer look of Brooks Sink there. From an aerial view, I also have a couple of pictures of Brooks Sink. As you can see, it's pretty deep. In these two pictures, there's not a lot of water, but the couple of times I've been out there, the water was all the way to the top. So a bunch of water can get into here. Brooks Sink, when the district did Phase 1, we were able to get an estimated 0.126 million gallons per day into the sink for recharge. With the Phase 2, we are again directing a new drainage basin into the sink. That drainage basin is 258 acres, and the expected recharge there is 0.114 million gallons per day, for a total of 0.24 million gallons per day expected or estimated recharge when the project is completed. We can go back to the memo. So again, I said it's an estimated 258 acres that we're wanting to divert the water into Brooks Sink. The task assignment will also provide the district with an operating and maintenance plan, develop a water control structure, automating concepts so that the district staff don't have to go out there and manually pull flashboards and stuff during events. And the TWA will take the design all the way to completion. So at that point, we'll be ready to start construction. So the recommendation is authorize the executive director to execute task work assignment with WSP, USA Environment and Infrastructure Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $260,000 for the Brook Sink Phase 2 project.
Question.
Okay, go ahead.
Leroy, do we have, an idea of the amount of water that we could pump into Brook Sink per day and still not get water quality that we're getting in the aquifer?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I do not have the answer to that question. I can find out. I
I know it's a great recharge project, and we've talked about it many times, and now we're looking at expanding how we can get more water into it. But I just want to make sure that we understand the quality that we're putting there and what it does to the overall quality.
I do. Part of the Phase 2 design is to, we have some monitoring that is proposed where we will do pre and post monitoring to see the water quality, the amount, and all of that of the water that's going in there. So we will know what's going in.
All right, look, that's good. So in the first 100,000 gallons a day that we've been doing Phase 1, has there been any noticeable change in the water quality?
I would not be able to answer. Is anybody? Water, Amy?
Yes, hello. We have been doing some monitoring of the water quality flowing into Brook Sink. Is that what you're asking, or are you asking for groundwater quality in the vicinity?
The quality, how much it disperses into the aquifer, and what does it change the aquifer quality?
That I will have to look at the data that we have. To my knowledge, we haven't seen any change in aquifer quality, but I'll have to get back and look at that. I can circle back to you.
Yeah, I have no problem with expanding the use of Brook Sink. I just want to make sure that what we're doing is that we're keeping up with the quality changes.
Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, we have not received any complaints from a potable water supply perspective within that area. There are a couple of residents in that area that have my personal number that I probably would get a call from relative to that. But the idea with this as well is that this is at least Phase 1, and I think Phase 2 is a restoration effort from a natural flow perspective of water that used to go to that sink. Is that the case with this second phase as well, Leroy?
Correct. This is
So
water.
the water did go to that system at one time, and we have to account for changes in land use within the area. But as I recall, the land use for this second phase is similar to what the land use for the first phase was as well.
Yes, it's all Rayonier property.
Monitoring would show.
And the water, if I understand correctly, is not coming from off the side of the road as far as a paved road or an industrial site. It's all forested land. So it's all surface water that the rain hits, and it's just draining to the sink. So it's all surface water.
Correct.
Coming out of the woods.
Correct.
I mean, I personally wouldn't drink it off the surface, but once it goes through those rocks, it makes a difference. Any other questions? All right.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the matter? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Thank you, Mr. Leroy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Miss Caitlin, floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The Division of Outreach and Operations has 6 items for your consideration today. Item number 20, 23, and 25 are for informational purposes and reporting. Item number 21 will be presented by Troy Roberts, our communications manager. Items 22 and 24 will be presented by Lorna Radcliffe, our chief of land management. And before I welcome Troy to the podium, item number 23, the Land Acquisition and Disposition Report on OPS, page 6. We have a correction that will be reflected in the minutes. The Taylor project that was approved on detailed consent, there's a note in the report that says the offer was withdrawn. That is incorrect. The offer has not been withdrawn. The project is simply on hold while additional project information is being gathered. So that just needs to be reflected in the minutes. The offer was not withdrawn. The project is just on hold. With that, I will welcome Mr. Roberts to the podium.
Chair, members of the board, nice to see you all again. Mr. Chair, I also realized that I did not have my name tag. Now, I thought about making one, but I was afraid that like ripping paper would be distracting. And
Neither does Caitlin, but it's okay. I mean, we're gonna let it slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Your hair was in the way. I apologize.
next
I'm
month,
blind in one eye. Forgive me.
I'll be prepared next month for
Thank
you.
you,
though.
Troy. Appreciate that.
Happy Springs Protection Awareness Month and Water Conservation Month. That is going to be the one of our priorities this month as we promote that through traditional media and social media. But a few other things that we've been working on for quite a while now and have finished products we kind of wanted to showcase. A few of them you actually have in front of you. We have 7 brochures there that kind of run the gamut from permitting to careers, to water wells. And while our website is fantastic and you can go on there and pretty much find answers to any of your questions that you may have, a lot of times when we go to some of our outreach events, we have questions from a number of individuals about, well, you know, what if I don't have internet access, or what if I have slow internet? How can I get this information? And a lot of times that's we'll call staff. And sometimes as you know, our staff are really busy doing a lot of other things. And while we enjoy talking to our customers, sometimes it can be made easier. And so through this, we've found some of the most frequently asked questions that we get about things that the district deals with, and have done brochures. And so we are going to be taking these to a lot of our outreach events this month. I have 3 next week that I'll be taking most of these to and be handing them out to the community. Obviously, getting information out and educating the public as best as we can about what the district does and answering some of those questions so staff do not have to spend time on those phone calls is a great use of my office's resources. And so we're happy to have these, and hopefully they'll be able to, again, benefit our community as a whole. One of the other things, and if you've missed it, I'm not really sure how, but Permit to Protect has been one of the focuses since I've been here in the 2.5 years or so that we've really wanted to push. Permitting is a huge thing here at the district, and sometimes when you have people moving into our community, especially along the river, they may not understand that they need permits. And so we've done our best to help educate the public and government entities and even some of the realtor groups that we go speak to about the importance of permitting and try to help them educate the public as well. But we go to a lot of different events and permitting questions abound sometimes. So we wanted to make it very evident that if we're at one of these events and you have a permitting question, we're your answer. And so we're going to be taking this to a number of events over the course of the next couple of months. You'll see at our CARES event that's coming up as well. And I know our permitting staff will be happy to have something that looks incredibly professional and also direct people in the right direction. So just a few things we wanted to showcase. We always appreciate y'all's support because we can't do any of these things without y'all's support. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions?
Comment.
Yes, sir.
Troy, this is outstanding. When I walked in, first thing just captured you out of the room. I like that. Another thing is that, and we've already discussed this, but I'd like the audience to know that yesterday I had a call about no wake information with the rising river, and they couldn't find any information on FWC or on Swanee website. And I called Hugh, and I think Hugh got a hold of Caitlin. Anyway, they got on this and put it on the website immediately with zones, and we have river rise levels anyway, so they coordinated that. Very informative. This is the kind of thing that responsive to the community's questions. I mean, if there's gonna be an enforcement for a no wake zone, they need to know when and where. And I appreciate the effort y'all put in, and I know you're busy, but very responsive and got right on it.
We know
Columbia
Chris,
County appreciated it, I know that.
we know Chris and them got a lot of questions about that as well. And so and Caitlin will agree, I'm sure, but whenever we get questions about that, we want to make sure that information is readily available. And it
I
did
appreciate
not
it.
appear that it was as readily available as we would have liked it to be. So if people have questions about it now, we have a giant banner on the front page of the website. It's on social media. If you have any questions about no wake zones, it is a lot easier to find now.
Well, I'm seeing a trend where the public is asking Swanee River questions, and the fact that we're responsive to it, that's a good trend. Thank you for your effort.
Any other questions for Troy?
No, I just want to make a comment about the display there. It's amazing to me they can get a picture that looks that good on a piece of cloth, isn't it?
That is
Like a 3D picture.
That is Naked Spring over at Gilchrist Blue. And I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I got this out last week and went through the instructions, and it said, like, P.S. you will require an assistant. I took that as a challenge myself. So it can be done with one person.
Very good. Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Troy. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Good morning.
board members. The Office of Land Management has 2 items on the agenda today. The first one is item number 22, which is for informational purposes. If I may, I would also like to update the board with the land management review that we had last week.
May.
So on Wednesday, April 3rd, the district staff led a field tour around Mallory Swamp. Staff's very appreciative that 2 of the board members, Mr. Lloyd and Mr. Smith, were able to make it. Thank you, gentlemen. The Excellence in Land Management utilizes scorecards to quantify the land management operations and meeting the management strategies set forth by the governing board and our district land management plan. The 10 strategies that were scored are water resources, forest resources, ground cover, soils, topography and natural community, rare species, cultural and historical resources, aesthetics, public use, and fiscal responsibilities. The scale is 0 to 2, with 0 meaning that the district did not meet the strategies, 2 meaning that the district met and exceeded the strategies. The district received an overall average score of 1.76, which is up from last year, which was 1.67. The participant scores indicate substantial acceptance with the programmatic achievement of the management strategies in fiscal year 2023. So thank y'all for letting me share that. Moving on to item number 24, the Suwannee Bicycle Association proclamation. In the early 1990s, the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council had applied for and received a $10,000 grant to develop and build bicycle trails on district lands along the Suwannee River. The grant was part of the original Florida Tourism Program, and a partnership was created between the council, the district, and the Suwannee Bicycle Association. On April 18th of 1994, the district entered into an agreement with the Suwannee Bicycle Association, and the Bike Association provided labor to design and build the trails as in-kind services to the grant. The trails are located on 7 tracks along the Suwannee River. Currently, a group of dedicated volunteers maintain approximately 53 miles of trail. They sponsor 3 major events. One of the events is I Did a Ride, and these events are of significant economic benefit to the White Springs and the surrounding area. The I Did a Ride is a 50-mile off-road bike challenge that attracts 300 to 400 participants annually. Additionally, visitors, residents, and event organizers use the trails for recreational purposes. The recommendation today is a proclamation recognizing the Swanee Bicycle Association for providing the district with 30 years of volunteer service by developing, building, and maintaining bicycle trails on district lands. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have a comment, and there again, I already understand the answer to it, but I don't just, so the board's aware. Back on OPS 4, with the amount of timber cutting, the price being down like it is, the projected values for land management will be down, and they may need a hand from the board to continue their excellent efforts at land management. If you'll notice, the acreage percentage-wise, we've cut 33% of what we proposed this year, but only 15% of the revenue. About a 50% difference in what, the $1 million they projected to have funding. So just so the board's aware that as the year progresses, we may need to supplement their budget a little bit to compensate for that. Pam, if you'll keep us reserved. That's all. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Keith.
That does bring up one little question I had. Like the $1.67 million that was appropriated through the legislature for land management, then we take that money, and then in addition to that, any land timber sales that we have supplements that budget, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I definitely agree with Mr. Keith's assumption that we need to be mindful of that, and if you guys start running short, you need to bring it to our attention.
Yes, sir. We will.
Would you like to say something now, sir? As the president of the Bicycle Association?
You didn't bring a bicycle for us to look at, did you?
No, I didn't think of that. I did wear the jersey at least that you talked about. This year's. We had, Mr. President,
Yes.
and the board, thank you for inviting. I've been around for 15, 16 years, the Swanee Bicycle Association. My accomplice, Mike and Nancy, have been around about 30 or 25 or 30 or so before me. And the young lady here made a very good description of the Bicycle Association. We're a volunteer group, all volunteers. Only a few of us live in the area. We maintain the over 50 miles of bicycle trail, which is, if anybody could dry them up right now, we'd sure appreciate it, because it's rather wet out there right now along the Swanee. But they're beautiful trails. We put a lot of man hours in it. We keep up with that, report it to the state park. There's some of it on the state park. As you know, there's several different land managers there with forestry, state park, and water management property. So we interact with all of those. But it's just we also, they didn't mention, we also provide bicycles to the community as our give back. By our bylaws, we're committed to giving back to the community. We gave 20 bicycles, I think, this year to Toys for Tots in Columbia and Hamilton County. Is our main emphasis. So that's about all I have, and thank you for the recognition of the bicycles. There's a lot of hard work and sweat being left on the Swanee River out there.
We appreciate you taking care of our resource, and it's all of our resource, right?
Yes.
And we're as taxpayers. And
Multi-use trail. We have a lot of people that stay at Stephen Foster that actually use the trails also.
we want to say thank you for your man hours and sweat, tears, concern. Thank you. I know y'all enjoy it, but we appreciate you guys, and that's why we wanted to make the proclamation. As a matter of fact, while we have everybody here, why don't we have a quick picture, if you don't mind? Yes, ma'am?
Could we get a motion and a second on the proclamation?
Yes.
Make a motion.
All right, motion.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on the proclamation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Proclamation, we want to get a picture, if you don't mind. Real quick, like, yes, come on. Yes, sir. Troy, do you want the whole board, or what do you want? Sure. Okay. Okay.
Behind everybody. All right, for next assignment. Where we can put it behind everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, sir. Yes, sir.
You could be front and center.
No.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin, is that everything for you?
Here, that concludes our items for outreach and operations.
Excellent. I think we're at a great spot for, I didn't get to sign yet, but I think we're in a great spot for a little break. You guys don't mind? Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in here at, actually 10 minutes. We'll be back in here at 10:16. Thank you. Meeting back to order. It's 10:16. So, Dr. Brown, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Mr. Chair, board members, we've got 3 items in water resources today. The first is just a brief update. And then I want to thank you for your approval of item number 28 by way of the consent agenda. We're going to use the surface water improvement management plan for the Swanee Basin that was just approved as the template to start with our coastal surface water improvement plan. It'll follow the same format and template, and we hope to bring that back to you later this year. We're hoping that river levels cooperate. We're trying to coordinate with Robbie on that to try and get the river levels to a point where we can take a look at some of the sites of interest for the Swanee next month at the board as we kind of check back in on the Swanee River Basin. For today, other than the division update, we just have a presentation, a Cherry Lake update by Dr. Sean King.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair, board members, good to see y'all again. I think it's been a little while since I've been up here. But today I've got an update for you on the Cherry Lake MFLs that we've been working on. And this will be an informational item for you guys. So to start here, just wanted to point out Cherry Lake's up here in northern Madison County near the Florida-Georgia line. It's one of several MFLs we're working on. This is the map of our current priority list for MFLs for this year. Next month, as Amy alluded to, I'll give you an update on the upper and middle Suwannee MFLs. And then hopefully later this year, we can talk about some of the Springs MFLs we've been working on. So just a little background, because it's been, I think, about a year before I went over some of the draft MFL work. Cherry Lake, again, is in Madison County. It's about 480-acre lake, makes up about half of the watershed that it sits in. And as you might be able to see, there's quite a few houses around the lake there. And importantly, it's in a confined aquifer area, meaning that there's a pretty thick clay confining unit between the lake and the Floridan aquifer. We do have water level data for Cherry Lake going back to the 1970s. And as you can see, there's a fluctuation there, generally less than 4 feet total. And we've seen this trend over time where the lake has declined a little over a foot over this time period. So there are some concerns about the lake levels there. So here's really the main update. Basically last summer, we decided after we were doing our reviews of the water budget model that we've been working on with our contractor, that we needed to recalibrate the model to increase the lake leakance from the lake to the aquifer. We thought that was a little too low in that version of the model. So we worked with our contractor to do that recalibration last summer. And I can tell you basically the results haven't changed all that much. We do still see that groundwater withdrawals are having minimal effects on the lake levels, despite that increased leakance that was added to the model. So we have the revised MFL and modeling reports. Those were posted for public comment back on August 15th of last year. And that's where we had a little bit of a delay because that's when Hurricane Idalia came through and affected that area where Cherry Lake's located. And we did get a request from one of the stakeholders there to extend that public comment period to give them some more time to be able to review these documents. So we did that. We extended that public comment period to October 31st. We ended up getting 22 public comments in, and just wanted to give you guys a little summary of what was in those comments. Basically, they all seem to be from local residents there, folks who knew Cherry Lake, and many of which seem to live on the lake itself. They're concerned about the state of the lake. Many of them perceive that the lake's kind of become degraded over time. They mentioned the low lake levels, and I think their perception that the increase in the aquatic vegetation that they're seeing in the lake is kind of related to that. And also that the lake's become a little less clear, a little more murky, and that was affecting kind of their usage of the lake. So I think that, was generally kind of what we were hearing in those comments. We didn't get a lot of feedback on the technical work itself. Just, folks expressing their concerns about the state of the lake there. We did have another virtual working group meeting where we invited these stakeholders if they wanted to kind of hear me go over some of the details for the MFL work there. We did that on February 7th. And, at this point, we're kind of done with this phase of the MFL work. So I did just want to show you, I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but as I mentioned, we did that recalibration of our water budget model. And so I wanted to show you kind of what those final results look like. This is a model that's based on the stormwater management model known as SWIM. There's a lot of different data sets that went into that. Also wanted to point out that it was kind of through this modeling where we were able to see that this outfall ditch that was constructed back in the 1930s or 40s for a grist mill has a pretty strong effect on the lake levels, and that it has seemed to have eroded over time. We've done some studies to show that, and it will likely continue to erode some. It also seems to be a spot that beavers like to dam up. And I think also just as a place where debris sometimes can kind of clog things up. So that also has effects on the lake levels there. So this is the recalibrated lake levels just for that calibration period. I'll show you the full period here in a minute, but wanted to point out a few things. So these blue points, those are the measured lake levels we have over this time period, whereas the orange line is the simulated lake levels. And in this case, we held the outfall ditch elevation steady and used that beaver dam elevation that we had surveyed back in 2017. But you can see there's times, particularly here in 2013, 14, and 15, where we saw even higher lake levels. And we're pretty sure that's related to additional beaver damming or debris blockages. We don't have a lot of information on when these dams were constructed and removed, but we do have two notes in our database that there were beaver dams removed right around when these time periods happened. So we think that explains some of these higher levels that the model wasn't capturing in that time. But overall, the model met all of our calibration criteria, and we felt that it was good to move forward with. So these are the actual water budget results from that recalibrated model. They're a little different than what I had shown you last year. Mainly just want to point out that for the lake itself, the biggest outflow is still through evaporation, but the next largest would be through that outfall ditch to a downstream wetland area. And then the next highest would be that deep percolation from the lake to the Floridan aquifer. And this number has come up a little bit because, as I mentioned, we did increase the lake leakage rate to the aquifer in the model. But we're still seeing, by and large, the main outfall and the main kind of changing factor here with the lake levels would be related to this outfall ditch. And I want to show you that a little more closely because we have looked at both pumping effects and how changes in that outfall ditch control elevation can affect the lake levels. So these are basically the same three scenarios I presented to you last year, but just with the recalibrated model. So we have this high control point, which would be that top of the Beaver Dam that was surveyed back in 2017. We have the medium control would be just the highest point along the ditch at that time, excluding the Beaver Dam. And then we have this low control, which would be if the ditch continues to erode over time, eventually this culvert here that goes under basically a road downstream of the lake there, that would kind of become the new control point eventually. So those are the three different scenarios. Right here, you can see both the lake levels at the top and the aquifer levels, which are roughly 70 feet lower than the lake. Again, there's that clay confining unit that kind of separates the lake from the aquifer here. And then you can also see here the simulated groundwater levels, where if we take all basically all the groundwater withdrawals out, that's what we would expect the lake levels, or the aquifer levels to be. And whereas the green line's more of our measured aquifer levels over time. And you can see some effect there. There's about 2 to 3 foot change in the aquifer levels due to the pumping in the area. There's actually 2 lines at the top here for the lake levels, but it's hard to distinguish the one with the pumping and the one without the pumping because the pumping just doesn't have that much effect on the lake levels, especially at this scale. But if we zoom in here a bit just to the lake levels, you can see, this would be without the pumping. If we add the pumping simulation into this, you can see again, there's some slight changes due to pumping where the levels would be slightly higher without it. But overall, not a large change. And we also don't see that downward trend over time that we're seeing in the measured data. But if you add in the change in that ditch control point elevation, this would be, that gray line's now that medium scenario I showed without the Beaver Dam. You start to see more of a change in the lake levels there. And then if it were to erode down to that culvert, we would expect even more of a change. And just so you can see this a little better, because it's kind of hard to see at this scale, if we zoom into the last 5 years here, you can see kind of a little more separation between the lines there, just due to that change in the ditch elevation and that control point there. Again, not much of an effect from pumping that we're seeing. So this is just a summary of that information. This 10th percentile would be kind of looking at those higher lake levels. The 50th would be the median, and the 90th represents the lower lake levels in each of these simulations. Again, between no pumping and measured pumping, we see some slight differences, but not all that much. Where we see larger differences are at these lower ditch elevation control points. So you can see, the water levels are dropping by about 1/2 foot when we go from that high point to the medium, and then another 0.4 feet or so down to that low point. So that's really the results of that updated model. I just want to show what that would kind of do to the actual kind of MFL metrics that we look at for these lakes. In this case, we looked at the Cypress standard, which was based on measuring these buttresses for cypress along the lake there. And then we looked at these different significant change standards. And I won't go into too much detail here. I want to show you, these are the results now. And This is kind of a unique situation. I mean, usually we would just have one set of these results, but because of this changing ditch elevation point, and we can see there would be, you know, potentially some different scenarios here depending just on what the condition of that ditch is at any particular time. One thing to point out, generally we would use the highest value here as what the minimum level would be for the lake. But we can only really use it if it would be something that would occur under a no pumping condition. Because again, MFLs are related to really regulating the groundwater withdrawal effects on a water body. In this case, we would compare it to the median here, which is this 150.52 in this scenario. We can see that even under a no pumping condition, that dock use standard wouldn't be met. So we basically can't use that one for an MFL. So we would go to the next highest, which in this case would be the wetland offset standard, which is related to protecting some of the marshy wetlands around the lake. That, you know, ditch elevation were to change from having a beaver dam to not having a beaver dam, we would actually see that the metric we would choose would also change, which would now be the Cypress standard, would be the highest one that could be achieved. So just wanted to point out, you know, there's kind of an issue here where the condition of the ditch would affect how we would move forward with setting an MFL in this case. Also just wanted to point out, you know, I mentioned we gotten public comments about the aquatic vegetation in the lake and that becoming kind of a nuisance to some of the recreational activities there. And we had kind of looked at this as part of doing this MFL work. Generally, I think we would consider more aquatic vegetation to be a good thing because it's more fish and wildlife habitat. But, you know, it can affect recreational usage. And this is really based on the amount of light, you know, that the plants would be able to get. And we do see that as lake levels decline, there is this period where the room for vegetation to grow would actually expand, because with the lower lake levels, there'd be more light reaching the plants. And that gets to a point though where the lake itself starts to kind of have less inundated area, so you couldn't have as many or as much plant area, you know, available there. And this happens to match up where we're seeing the lake having gone down from roughly 151.5 feet down to this 150.5. We would expect there to be more area and more aquatic vegetation. And so that does kind of match up with what the residents are seeing there. So to wrap this up, and this isn't an action item for the board to vote on today, but district staff are recommending that we do not move forward with adopting the MFL for Cherry Lake, and we really have two reasons for that. One is I think we have pretty good evidence now that it's not groundwater withdrawals that are affecting the lake levels and aren't likely to in the near term. It really seems to be that the condition of that outfall ditch that's causing some of these lower levels. And because of the erosion there and you know, it's kind of an unstable ditch in some ways, where that control point elevation could change over time, whether it's through beaver dams or blockages or if a structure's put into place. All these things would change that control point and would ultimately, you know, potentially change how we would set the MFL at the end of the day. So I think stabilizing that outfall ditch, you know, would lead to a, you know, better MFL recommendation. But regardless, I mean, without the withdrawal effect really being there, and there's kind of limited benefit, I think, from setting an MFL for Cherry Lake. So what we would recommend would be when we get to our annual MFL priority list approval, which will happen in the fall, that we would simply remove Cherry Lake from the list at the time, and then, you know, we would be you know, prioritizing other water bodies to work on, but Cherry Lake could always be added back in the future if that was warranted. And then finally, this doesn't mean that the district's going to totally, step away from Cherry Lake. We have been engaged with the stakeholders there. And if folks there do want to do something with the outfall ditch or with other lake management options, we would have our agriculture and environmental projects team, or the environmental resource permitting office would likely be the lead in that case. And we have options, for submitting projects for funding, and have offered, to help folks with any permitting questions they have there. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I think I've asked this question before, but the outfall ditch, it was obviously man-made. It was put in there in the 30s for industrial or commercial purposes. Has it now created a wetland back there as a result of that outfall, or was that a natural situation? And does it actually recharge the aquifer at that point? Just trying to weigh the pros and cons of, it sounds like if you eliminate or at least control the outflow, that it would solve some of the problems that the residents or concerns they have about the water levels in the lake. But are we then deteriorating the aquifer by not having recharge? That's my question.
Vice Chair. So I think there was some wetland areas there in the past. I think they are getting more water now, probably through that outfall ditch, than they would have, without it. We'd probably have to study it more to know whether there's more recharge happening in those wetland areas versus the lake itself. I would guess they'd be pretty similar. But yeah, I don't know that holding more water in the lake, would necessarily reduce recharge in the area. But it probably would have some effects on those wetland areas that would need to be looked into.
So in your opinion, based on comments you've gotten, is the stakeholders or the comments that you've received, are they more in favor of doing something with the ditch, or are they more in favor of leaving things as they are?
So I think most folks were indicating they would like to see the lake levels raised and stabilized. I think we kind of heard through those comments that folks didn't have a really great understanding of why the lake levels have changed over time. I think many of them have heard about this outfall ditch and are aware that, periodically beaver dams are removed and things like that. But yeah, I think there did seem to be, among the comments we received, folks seemed to want higher lake levels and some kind of structure put in to achieve that.
So who's removing the beaver dams? Just local residents that decide it needs to go?
I think the local residents have done that sometimes. I think the county also has removed some periodically. I think particularly when there's dams or blockages at the culvert that I was showing at the road there. That's, I think, more of the county's responsibility to keep that culvert cleared. So that's, I think, where it's normally coming from.
From a district's perspective, we're not making a recommendation one way or the other. It's going to be up to the county and the local residents to make that determination.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Any other questions?
Well, I have one.
Yes, sir.
The murkiness you alluded to, is that because of the lowering of it, or the water moving around more causes the murkiness? If it was raised up and more stable, it would clear up?
I wouldn't say for sure what would be causing that murkiness. I do think with lower lake levels, you can have more resuspension of sediments and material along the bottom of the lake. That's actually related somewhat to that dock use standard we looked at, is trying to maintain a certain depth of water so that boats aren't, stirring it up as much. But also with the increased aquatic vegetation, there's more organic material in the lake as well. So I would say generally higher lake levels would probably help with that, but yeah, I don't know if that's going to solve the problem.
Okay. That's my question.
Any other questions? Thank you very, very much. I appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas.
And did you know that because of my name tag?
Yes, I did. And the mustache gave it away too.
Good morning, Board. And Mr. Thompson, to follow up with Sean's presentation on there, we are making our staff available to work with both the stakeholder groups and the county. If the local decision is made there that they would like to do some type of restoration effort, we've developed some of the technical documents relative to the MFL and the habitat and the structures in that area and the water resource values in that area. And so that information would be relevant to some type of restoration effort if that's the decision that the local stakeholders want to do with there. And we would help them try to secure funding for that restoration effort. It's my understanding that the outflow ditch there is maintained by a private landowner with there, so it would take the cooperation of that private landowner as well to undertake those efforts. But we're willing to help any way that we can with there. It just doesn't, the MFL, establishing an MFL for it is just not appropriate with that. Couple of things that for the board that I did want to point out going forward. Ms. Charles, appreciate your comments relative to the noticing for the no wake. We do work with Chris and his group very closely on trying to get that information out. The Fish and Wildlife establishes those no wake zones within an area, utilizing our water level data regarding that as one input for it. So we appreciate the working relationship on there. And then, unfortunately, relative to our photo over here, we don't have Naked Ed in the picture, who is a local resident or had been for a lengthy time in that area there at that particular spring. But I do think Troy and company did a great job in getting that information out, and I think that that'll help us. I've received some very positive input back about the brochures that have been developed from an informative standpoint. So I think that our staff has done a great job with that and continues to do a great job on that outreach effort. A couple of reminders that we've got. We do have the CARES event coming up. I know many of you have participated in that on the 2nd of May. Looking forward to it at 6 p.m. out at the Research Center here. If you need any additional information, just let us know. We'll be happy to help undertake that. And also, we are intending on having a tour next month after our board meeting. We're counting on Amy and Sean to get the river levels right, and Robbie with that. But even outside of that, we do have some sites that we think will be very beneficial for the board to see relative to the work that the district is doing. And as some of you were discussing earlier, I appreciate Mr. Thompson and also Mr. Smith being able to participate on our land management tour. It was a soggy start. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join them. I was in Tallahassee, but I knew that it was going to be a soggy start, but land management carried it off. And as I understand it, they thought that the input that I've received is that the tour went very well, quite informative out for the Mallory. So appreciate their team effort with it. We do have a workshop item today, Mr. Chair, and that particular item will actually be audit training related to our auditor selection process that'll be coming up for putting out bids relative to our audit requirements and needs that we have to go forth. Mr. Sam McCall, who is our Inspector General, will be giving that presentation as well. I appreciate him being here today. And with that, though, I would ask our audit committee currently is made up of Ms. Johns and Mr. Keith, Mr. Schwab, and also Mr. Lloyd. And I would ask that if the committee is willing to serve as our auditor selection committee, that we need to have relative to taking the training, putting forth and selecting an auditor for our next go-around. With that, the entire board is required by statute to have the training that Mr. McCall is going to be presenting. But just from a matter of simplicity, if the audit committee is willing to serve as our audit selection committee, that would be very favorable. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would add.
What is the pleasure of the board? Go ahead and ask the audit committee to do that. The audit committee members that are sitting here at the table, are we willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. I am too. Does anybody else that's not on the audit committee, would they like to join, being that you're going to be trained today? I mean, that's up to you. You would? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Very good.
We will make note of that. And
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Not to put you on the spot or anything at all. Okay, all right.
Not wearing my name tag.
I know. I understand that. I don't even know what your name is. All right. So that being said, is that all you have?
The last thing I was going to say is just to mention that we do have an audit committee meeting today.
Okay.
Following the workshop, where Powell and Jones will be presenting our 22-23 financial audit results. Thankfully, there were no findings associated with that, and so we'll be having that today as well.
Excellent.
That's all I've got.
Yes, sir.
Just one correction. I did not attend the land management meeting. Mr. Smith and Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Lloyd, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate that correction.
I intended to, but it
Yes, sir.
had a conflict. Yeah.
Exactly.
We appreciate you setting the record straight, especially for the record itself. Thank you, sir. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Any other board concerns that while we have opportunity? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thomas, I would entertain a motion to end this meeting, and we're gonna, if we can, pick up with our training. How long is the training do you think it's gonna take?
3 minutes.
Excellent, that's perfect. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go right into that after the training, and we're gonna go into our audit committee meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Made that motion, thank you. I got a second. Any other discussion on the adjournment of our meeting? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chair, board members.
Thank you.
I'm Sam McCall, your District Inspector General. And my job today is to explain as best I can the Florida statutes and some rules the Auditor General's issued relating to an Auditor Selection Committee. We'll get right into it. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me, and I'll try and answer any question I can. Mr. Thomas and Ms. Shaw asked me to make this presentation today. I've worked in government over 50 years, so I've done a little bit of everything, but I've served boards and audit committees for 4 or 5 of those in my career, and I've served on audit committees for 4 or 5 organizations. So outside of my work here, I guess I call it volunteer work. I'm the current chair of the audit committee of the Florida State Board of Administration, which invests all of the Florida retirement system monies, the hurricane catastrophe monies, and I call it the local government surplus trust fund, but it's now called Florida Prime, but about $250 billion. So I'm here to provide any advice or tell you more than I know probably, but.
Are you writing checks?
I don't write checks.
Okay, I just
don't do any of that. So, but I do have some experience with audits and audit committees, and so I'll try and share some of that with you. So with the starting here, we have some responsibilities. These are all in the Florida statutes. The Florida statutes covers 2 pages on how to select an outside firm. And the important thing about that is if you were to, excuse my word, mess up in the process, by statute, you have to start all over again. So it's real important to do everything exactly right so you don't have complaints for any firm that proposes and thinks they've been done wrong. So I'm going to try and share with you a short version of the 2 pages of the Florida statutes I brought with me, but I'm not going to go into it. This is the Auditor General's recommendations on auditor selection and Selection Committee guidance. That's about 24 pages long. There's specific things that the board has to do. There's specific things that the Auditor Selection Committee has to do. So if someone volunteered this morning to be on the Auditor Selection Committee, there's a lot of work involved in that. So tell you that in advance.
Don't worry about that.
So the challenge is to select a qualified firm. And the qualifications should be the most important thing. Price is important, but price shouldn't guide what you do in selecting the best firm to do the audits. Y'all know there's a balance in getting the right firm and the right price, but that's what you're trying to achieve. They're going to perform your financial audit and your compliance audit. Your compliance audit is for both federal grants and state grants. This would be for the period ending September 30, 2024. As the process goes along, and Pam and I work together, she's done the major part of the work, but she's laid out a schedule of what should happen over the next several months to accomplish appointing that firm. And you have the authority and the responsibility to say how you want that request for proposal to look. For example, you could say we want a 3-year contract, we want a 5-year contract, we want a 3-year contract with an option to renew 1 year at a time to 5 years, or you can say any period of time you want, but that's part of the responsibilities of the board. So in doing this, we must, and that's a real strong point there, we must comply with the auditor selection procedures established in Section 218 of the Florida statutes. We must be aware of the Auditor General's guidelines. They're not mandatory, they're only guidelines, but they follow a committee put together by the Auditor General, the Government Finance Officers Association, and CPA firms throughout the state to set up these guidelines to be followed by cities, counties, special districts throughout the entire state of Florida. So what are the responsibilities? So, and I think you've done that. First one is the governing board must appoint an auditor selection committee consisting of at least 3 members with 1 member as the chair. The statutes say that the people that are on the committee should have I call it an appreciation for governmental accounting, governmental auditing, a basic understanding of financial statements. I've talked with Pam, and she feels very comfortable that you have a very qualified group of people that will be on the auditor selection committee. If you didn't feel that you were comfortable, then you could go locally and get a CPA firm or someone to volunteer to help you, but she feels very comfortable that you feel comfortable with that. That's the Auditor Selection Committee. No member of the district can be on your Auditor Selection Committee. They can advise you, but they can't be on the committee. So that's another important thing. And this may be a little different than you did last time, so that's why I'm here to try to explain that, to make sure that when the Auditor General does their audit, they'll say that you did a good job in selecting the firm. This is the committee's responsibility. They shall establish the factors for evaluation of the audit proposals, which may include, and this comes from the statutes, personnel being, who's going to come do the audit? You know, what's their qualifications? Are they CPAs, not CPAs? And I've looked at proposals during my career, and I can advise you that even the statutes talks about having professional skepticism. You know, not everybody's perfect and not everybody's terrible. Somewhere in between there's a balance. But having that skepticism, if someone says, we have 5 partners in New York City that's going to work on this audit, I don't think you can expect them to come down here and do the audit. But a lot of firms, they'll make it look beautiful. But the question is, who's going to be here and do the work? Who's going to review that work? Who's going to make sure the audit's done properly? So that's the professional skepticism, it says, because it takes a lot of effort to put these proposals together, and their job is to convince you they want to be the number 1 firm, because that's what they're trying to be, is the number 1 firm you can select. So the committee will establish the factors, which includes personnel, their experience, and their ability to furnish the required services. And then other desired factors. You can add additional factors that you might want to add. I'll give an example here today that I'll show you some additional factors you might want to consider. The governing board, and this is the audit committee, the selection committee, they shall publicly announce the request for proposals, and provide interested firms with the request for proposal. Then they shall evaluate the proposals and rank and recommend to the board in order of preference no fewer than 3 firms deemed most highly qualified to perform the service. So all of you, board members, sir, you volunteered to review audit proposals, to score those proposals, and come back with a ranking that will come up with the number 1 ranked firm. As needed, as you would expect, district staff can assist you in developing the proposal and making the announcements and the distribution of the request for proposal, but basically it's your call as to how you want this to go. They can assist you. They can't be on the committee, but they can work in an advisory capacity.
Now, according to the statute, you have to have at least 3.
At least 3. You can have.
So what happens if you have 2?
It doesn't speak to 2. It says you shall have at least 3 members on the auditor selection committee.
No, it says 3 firms.
Oh, you have to come up with 3 firms. If you come up with 2 firms, that's okay, but you still have to rank them first and second.
Right, but it says no fewer than 3. So if you only have 2, that's not enough according to the statute. Is that
Well,
correct?
I think I can correct myself later on, but I believe you can move forward, but you still have
Okay.
to rank those 2 as first.
That's yeah. Oh, well, you still have to rank even if it's just 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully, we're a lot better than that. We get at least 4.
Well, I would say this in terms of your proposal too. That's really important because we all know with, like you're beating out things, I know Mr. Taylor does that. If you start off on the wrong foot, it's never going to get better. This request for proposal has to be very specific as to what you're looking for. Because when you finish and you select the firm, then that proposal, more than likely in the statutes talks about it, it's incorporated into your contract, and then you have to follow that from that point forward. So it's real important to get the evaluation factors, the scoring process, so that every firm knows exactly what's expected of them. When I was with the city of Tallahassee, I worked on the request for proposal, and we told the firms that came back, we want you to put in tab 1 this, tab 2 this, tab 3 this, for its technical ability, experience and those type things, because we didn't want them to come back later and say, well, we had it on page 45 and you didn't see it. Well, our response was, we asked you to put it in the tab 1. You didn't put it in the tab 1, so that's on you, not on us. So it's real important. And even staff came back and helped the audit committee and said, we found their response to technical advice, in tab 1 on page so-and-so. It's real important to get that done correctly. Governing board's direction to the audit committee on the selection method, and this is something you can be thinking about now. I think you can come back and make a decision later. You may want to provide some direction to staff now, but the statute provides 2 methods of selecting the firms. The first method is if compensation is not one of the factors used and not used to evaluate the firms, the governing body shall negotiate a contract with the firm ranked first, or cease negotiations and go to the second-ranked firm. And this can be a little confusing, so I'll spend a little time here. So if compensation is not one of the factors, then if you had I'll show you an exhibit in just a minute, compensation is given 0 points. Everything else in terms of qualifications has points. So you come back and the number 1 ranked firm is the one you negotiate with. Let's say you have a number 1 ranked firm and their fee is over a 5-year period, because they may give you a fee over a 5-year period, their fee is $200,000 more than the next ranked firm. You may say to that firm, we want to use you, but we can't afford you. Price is not the only thing, but if the second ranked firm is right under them, just really close in terms of qualifications, you may say, we may go to the second ranked firm. But the point of the statute is once you cease negotiations with the first ranked firm, you don't go back to them till you've gone through all the other firms. But then you go to firm number 2 and try to negotiate with them, firm number 3 and try to negotiate with them. So it's usually the advantage of the firm that's ranked number 1 in qualifications to try and negotiate a price that you can all live with. It's also important for those firms that do give you a price, because some firms may and you've probably seen this, I use the word lowball, their price. And then they come back in the end of the second year and say, we just can't do the audit for that. We've got to have an increase in our fee. Well, I've been there before, and I had a firm come to me once and say, well, there's been new audit standards, and we've got to do a lot more work, so we need an increase in the fee. And I said respectfully to them, I said, those audit standards are for you. They weren't for us. You've got to do more work, but we're not going to raise the fee, so you can decide if you want to stay with us or not. So it's important to make sure that everybody understands that this is a contract over a certain period of time for a certain amount of money, and they should have a price accordingly. The second method is if compensation is one of the factors and is used to evaluate the firm's governing body. Now, this is not the audit selection committee. The governing body shall select the highest ranked qualified firm or document the reasons for not selecting the highest ranked firm. So in this one, you up front, you say, we're going to give so many points per price, and that's going to be considered. And if you come out with the number one ranked firm, you'll be the firm that we'll work with. Or we'll have to document in the public records the reason for not going to the second ranked firm. So I've summarized this. Method one doesn't consider the proposed fee in the evaluation and selection process, and the focus is on qualifications. I would even suggest in the ones I've worked on, although all the firms submitted a fee, we only looked at the qualifications first and looked at the fees second. We didn't let fee drive our understanding, our objective of getting a good firm. So the ones I've been involved with, we looked at the qualifications first, and after we ranked them on qualifications, then we opened the package to see what the fee was, regardless of the method used. Under method two, it does consider the proposed fee in the evaluation selection process, and the focus is on recommending the top three is on the firm with the best qualifications and fees. So let's take a look here. I put together something. I hope it's not too busy for you, but method one is compensation's not an evaluation factor, and method two is compensation is an evaluation factor. We spoke earlier about the evaluation factors. This is in the statutes, the first three: ability of the personnel, their experience. Have they done other water management district audits, other local governments, something that they'd be familiar with statutes and things like that? Have they done audits of federal grants and state grants? Are they familiar with that? The ability to provide the required services. Are they independent? If one of the partners is in business relationship with someone in the district, then that might be an independence problem. So they have to be independent in order to do the work. Quality controls, they should have a quality control review once every 3 years. All of our RFPs require them to submit their latest quality control report. And then firm references, that's your choice, but sometimes you'll say we want to get 3 or 4 or 5 references from other governmental entities that you've audited over the last X number of years to see what they think about you. I added this next one: audit approach, staffing plan, and timeline. The audit approach was how are we going to go about doing this audit? The staffing plan was who's going to be the audit partner, the audit manager, the senior auditor, how many people are going to assign to this audit to make sure it's done timely, and what's the timeline? You certainly have under the law certain dates that you have to have your financial statements issued by. So you want them to not trying to be doing your audit if it's a small firm, and it can be a large firm if they have just a few people in their governmental practice. But I've seen situations where they're short staffed because they're trying to do 4 audits at one time and they don't have the staff to do it. So that last factor there, what's their timeline on how they're going to do it, and what the days of the month and the months that they expect to have certain things done and your statements issued by. So let's look over at the this method one. On points one, I totaled 100 there. You'll see that under the compensation, there's no points there for the fee. So under firm one, they had a total of 96 points. Firm two had a total of 92 points. So under method one, where you're not looking at compensation, then you would negotiate with the firm ranked first, the firm number one, 96 points. and you would negotiate a price with that person or that firm. But the first thing is you're looking for there is qualifications. The second example I've given you is totals 100, but you'll notice that I had 15 points for compensation. That also totals 100. It has to, as you could expect, reduce the points for the other categories. But in this case, firm 1 had 86 points and firm 2 had 87 points. So you wind up with two different firms depending on the method you choose. These points I assigned are arbitrary. That's totally up to the auditor selection committee. But the point here is under method 1, firm 1 had 96 points. That was under qualifications. Under method 2, because you considered, or whoever would be doing this, considered compensation, then in that case, firm 2 wound up being the number one ranked firm. So each firm wants to be number one, and you can provide guidance to the staff as they start helping you develop your request for proposal as what direction you want to go in. But that's just an example. I could have changed the numbers and it worked a different way, but this is where you wind up with two different firms depending on the method you use, and that's what's real important there. The governing board may allow a designee to conduct negotiations on its behalf. So if you were to choose your executive director to negotiate on your behalf, you can do that. You can negotiate directly if you want to. So that's a choice that the governing board can decide. The governing board must ensure the agreed upon compensation is reasonable to satisfy the needs of the governing board. So money is important. Qualifications is important. So you have to try to strike a balance there where you're very comfortable that you're getting a quality firm at a fair price. Then each procurement of audit services shall be evidenced by a written contract meeting all provisions and conditions of the procurement of such services. And that contract will probably embody your request for proposal in it. So that's kind of a summary there. And I'm going to stop there. Let me back up a few slides here. I'm going the wrong way. Let's get back to where I was. Here's where I was. To summarize is the Florida statutes places a great deal of responsibility on the governing board in terms of the auditor selection. It requires the governing board to appoint at least 3 people to be on the auditor selection committee. One of those 3 would be the chair. They would be involved in the evaluation criteria, making sure that the firms in the community or wherever is aware that this proposal is out there. The Auditor General's guidelines say that you could publicly announce this in a newspaper. There's various methods to accomplish that. You can contact the Auditor General. They can give you a listing of firms in a regional area if you're looking for that. The fee that you might pay should probably be an all-inclusive fee. Large firms from Miami would have a hard time coming to Quincy, where I live, or some small town because they can't afford to pay the travel. So if you've had to have an all-inclusive fee, they've got to consider that in their travel expenses in the fee that they propose, that type of thing. But it leaves a great deal of responsibility up to the Auditor Selection Committee, with oversight by the governing body and certain responsibilities of the governing body. The idea is to come out with a firm that you're comfortable with. You can say that and I've seen this at FSU when I was there, the firm that had the audit wanted to have the audit. They had it for 5 years. They wanted to have it for the next 5 years. There's nothing wrong with that. But you put in there, you can continue as the auditor if that's the choice of the governing body. I think best practices would say that you should probably name another partner for the next 5 years, that type of thing. I've seen audit firms have contracts for 15 or 17 years. I saw one, which wasn't really the firm's fault, but there was a major fraud in an organization after they had the audit for 17 years. And people say, where was the firm? And really, this was a $350 million operation, and the fraud was about $1 million, which is not material to the financial statements. It's a lot of money to you and I, at least it is to me, but it wasn't the firm's fault. But that's where this was at FSU, and so they changed it to say we may keep you 5 years, but at the most, we're going to probably keep you 10 years, then we're going to go to another firm. It's hard to justify the public how $1 million fraud can occur if it's not caught by the auditors, although it wasn't material to the auditors. But having had the audit 17 years, you start losing favor with the public when something like that happens. Does anyone have any questions before I present the last slide?
How many years have our auditing group been here now? Because I don't remember this process, and I've been here since 15. Now, my memory could be short. I don't know. Right. Yeah.
I believe the process last time, as I understand, staff had more involvement in the process. This time, we're looking strictly at the statutes and the rules of the Auditor General to make sure the governing board is meeting all the requirements of the Florida statutes. So it does put a much heavier burden on the governing board.
Understood.
And that's important there. Well, the last slide that I have is that the board currently has a standing audit committee. You currently do not have an audit committee charter. Generally, you recommend a charter for an audit committee. Speaking with Pam, a proposed charter will be presented to the board for its consideration at a subsequent meeting. And it would cover things that we're talking about today. And then the audit committee charters typically include the following elements. I shared some things up here with you. I drew this from a model legislation that's issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors on model audit committee charters. It should cover the organizational principles of the committee, their operational principles, work plans, agendas, conflicts of interest, disclosure, operating procedures, minutes of meetings as you do in this meeting. Talk about risk management, control, compliance, organizational governance, and then the oversight of the audit committee, which you currently do, which is have oversight over the internal auditors. I would be the internal auditor as your inspector general. You approve the audit plan. You review the audit reports. You make sure there's follow-up to correct things. Review any special investigations I might perform if that were to occur. Hope they don't, but I'm available for that. And inquire about any indications of fraud. Oversight also is over the external auditors to review the scope and objectives of their financial statement audit, exercise final approval and appointment or discharge of the auditors. Now, this is from the model legislation, model audit committee charter. It's saying have final approval of the appointment or discharge. The Florida statutes is much more detailed than the Institute of Internal Auditors. This is why this one is much broader, because you have a lot more responsibilities under the Florida statutes. Then monitor their progress and their action plans to make sure the audit's done timely and in a quality manner, make sure any issues that are identified are followed up on. And then to review the financial statements and public accountability reporting. You will have your CPA firm today report to you on the results of their last audit to make sure you're aware of the opinion they give you, what they say about state grants, federal grants, any internal control issues they see, any compliance issues they see. That's, as you know, is part of the audit committee's responsibility. And then if there are any significant accounting changes that you need to be aware of, then they would talk to you about that. A big issue a while back was leases. I don't know if you have leases or not, many leases, but there's been changes in accounting principles for leases. So the thing here is that a charter would be best practice, and Pam is going to work on that. The committee would get to review that, make suggested changes, and hopefully come up with an audit charter that help guide you going into the future. The conclusion of my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Keith.
Do you have any idea how many qualified accountant companies there are in North Florida? State qualified to do?
I can say that when I was at Florida State, because we had 11 direct support organizations, Seminole
You
Booster.
can always call somebody in Gainesville, they could tell you.
Yeah. Gainesville has some very good local government auditors. We could call them. They have James Morris down there, and they're a great firm. But we normally had about, I would say about 7 to 8 firms that would propose on our audits at FSU. That's Tallahassee, not that far from
I
here.
knew it was a limited number.
Yeah, it's hard for, and when we had something like the Seminole Boosters or the FSU Foundation, I mean, you're talking $350 million budgets. They can afford to have a KPMG or one of the big firms come and pay the travel fee and all that because it's a huge one. But I would say, let's see, Leon County Research and Development Authority, I was on that board and on their audit committee. We had small firms propose because the fee was real small. And so probably you'd have 3 or 4 or 5 firms propose, and small firms can be really, really good. They just have to have some experience in auditing government. In government, you have a different set of accounting principles for government accounting. They're different than the private sector. You have different audit standards in government than you do in the private sector. I had the pleasure of serving on the Comptroller General of the United States Audit Advisory Council for 10 years. And their standards are way beyond the the American Institute of CPA standards for audits because they get into details on independence and things like this. So small firms can be very good if they know government auditing. We had a firm that proposed on auditing the College of Business. They had an investment program there. And the world changed, and all of your governmental entities then started having to follow government accounting principles and government audit standards. And that firm came back to us and said, we have the audit contract now, but we really are not in the business of doing governmental auditing, so we're going to have to let you find someone else because we can't do it. A firm shouldn't propose to you if they don't feel they can do the work.
Right. Well, if I remember the last contract we did, I believe was 5-year with 3 one-year extensions or something like that.
The last one was a 3-year with 5 1 years.
Okay.
We're at the last.
Okay. And I think we, if I remember right, a major factor in that, what we received as far as bids.
We did include compensation, but it was a minimal factor, not a large factor.
Then when we get the request back, or when we send out the request and we get the applications back, verifiable qualifications. I mean, it's easy to fill out a form that I'm the best and, I'm going to have my number 1 team take care of your business and they're going to be at your beck and call and, well, you read that, you rate them really high. Hey, you can only go by what other districts or local government opinion of the quality of work they've gotten from them, I would assume. So how do we go about verifying their information?
Most of the RFPs that will come back to you will show every member of the audit team. It'll show you their education, their background, their experience, the number of other type governmental entities that they've done audits for. And usually that's really, really good information for you there. I've shared a little professional skepticism with you today, sir, but I get skeptical when I see someone from Washington, D.C. or New York City or Seattle, Washington in a proposal because they're probably not going to show up. And it doesn't help them that much.
Mr.
And I have, last comment, I have reviewed the financial statement audits that you've had of the current firm you have. And I was very, very impressed with the amount of work they did on those financial statements. So you've been very fortunate in the past with the firm you've had.
Could you indulge me in just explaining your role and is our Auditor General, are you retained by the board itself, or are you retained by the state? I mean, explain that to me.
All right. The Florida statute says that both Swanee River Water Management District and the Northwest Florida Water Management District, because you're smaller than the other three, they can hire a person to be the Inspector General on a part-time basis. So the statute also says that as your Inspector General, I have to meet all the requirements of the Florida statutes as if I were an Inspector General in a state agency in the state of Florida. First of all, I have to be a certified Inspector General. So I am employed by Law Red Cronin Monroe, which is a CPA firm, has a contract with the district to do your audits. They're doing an audit now on cybersecurity. I will review all that work. I'm involved in the reviewing the audit program, the audit plan, approving the work they do, and helping to sign off on that report. But I'm an outside engaged person. In terms of my role, I report functionally to you and administratively to Mr. Taylor Thomas. So I serve two people, but ultimately I serve you, and I always look at I serve the taxpayers too, which I think you all do yourselves. So it's a little different role. When I was in the legislature, we served the legislature. When I was with the city of Tallahassee, I served the city commission. At FSU, I served both the board of trustees and the president, which is similar to this. Here I'm serving the board, and I'm serving your executive director, administratively to him, functionally to you. So I'm your auditor, and you pay the firm that I work for to do what I do. And since I retired from the university, there aren't that many certified inspector generals around that are available.
So what do you do in your time off to have some fun? Because it sounds like your job's really boring.
He left. I was going to say this. Work with Law Red Cronin Monroe, and then I work with.
You talking about boring stuff again. Now, what do you do for fun?
Talking about like going to watch the Gators play baseball or something.
I was a Gator and a Seminole.
Okay, how does a double-minded man do what you do?
I knew you had
People
some.
People don't understand that. But
I don't understand that, no.
I was at Florida. I was at University of Florida when Steve Spurrier was quarterback. That's how far I go back with Florida.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm sorry, you didn't answer my question, sir.
What do I do in my fun?
Yeah, to have some fun. I mean, because all work and no play makes Jack a very dull boy.
I've been fortunate in my life. I had to work a long time. I'm like the rabbit, I had to go slow, but I get there eventually. So I worked so far 55 years in government. But my fun thing is I live on Lake Talcott, and got a beautiful home on the lake there. Live in a log cabin. Bought it at Swanee River Log Homes, made out of cypress. I own about 230 acres, about 7 miles from me. And on that 230 acres, I've got about 100 acres of longleaf pine. I have a Florida a tree farm sign on my property. I have a Florida stewardship sign on my property. And this January, I got from the Florida Wildlife Commission, I got a wildlife recognition program sign. And in Gaston County, there's only 6 farms or 6 properties that have that sign so far. So I'm thrilled to death with my Florida wildlife recognition program.
Congratulations. Yes, sir.
And so I've got deer, turkey, bear on my property. I have a 80 horsepower John Deere tractor that I do my own bush hogging with and plow my own fire lines, and I do prescribed burns, and I help them with that. So
you have a good life then, don't you?
I've been blessed.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, as boring as your work is, I mean, you have to have some fun like that,
Yes.
Have we got any more of this Farm Cares hat? I give the man a hat.
We do. I just finished.
No, we can't give that man anything now. I mean, he's our auditor general. I mean, we can't be bribing him with a hat.
I just finished building a seawall, redoing my seawall in front of my.
Did you get a permit for that?
I have a permit.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I had to get one.
Because I know some people.
Yeah, I'm repairing mine.
Okay, all right.
I'm not building, I'm repairing it. But in repairing it, I'm 77 years old, and I put 160 50-pound bags of Sac Creek concrete with 90% of my work. I'm had a sore back lately.
I've done that. That's not fun.
50-pound, but I used to
not
make
fun.
them in 80-pound bags. I
Isn't it
can't.
amazing how slippery they get after a while?
Is there,
Can't hold on to
is
them.
there any more questions for the Auditor General here in our training?
But my number one priority is this board. Anytime you need me, you call me. To the extent Mr. Thomas needs me on this RFP or the, whatever you need me for, I'm available to give you any advice that you want.
Thank you. Your trainings are very thorough, and I value our time when you do do this. Thank you.
I take my job very serious, but I don't try to take myself very serious.
Well, I'm the same way. You probably don't believe that, do you?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
You wouldn't be the vice chair if you were.
Okay, we are going to roll into the audit committee presentation now. If you don't mind, we have some time. Are you presenting? Oh, you're announced. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
May want to formally adjourn the workshop.
Okay.
And I can attest that Mr. McCall does spend some time on his dock because I've spoken to him a couple of times and that's where he was at, looking at the lake. So
I'm just saying,
appreciate that, but he answered his phone.
You're probably not gonna believe this, but my wife's an accountant too, okay? And I have to push her all the time. You got to do something fun. I mean, because you most boring person I know. But, you know, we have fun at my house. All right, so I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. All right, so we're gonna roll right into the audit committee. I want to call this meeting to order. Ms. Robin, is there any, can you do roll call, please?
Ms. Johns? Mr. Key?
Here.
Mr. Schwab?
Here.
Mr. Lloyd?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, there's a.
Thank you very much. All right, so do we have any public comment? Tyler or Ms. Robin? I don't have any cards on the desk, all right, so we're gonna move through this, right? Ms. Pam, I'm gonna turn the floor over to you. The fiscal years 2022-23 financial audit.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab, Chair Schwab. We do have the one item, and it is the fiscal year 22-23 financial audit. It was very thorough this year, and a lot of work went into it, and so we were very proud with Powell and Jones and the work that they did, and appreciate them coordinating it all with us and putting this report together. They've been our auditor for quite a while, as we just discussed, and it's you're going to see that we did not have findings again this year. So what I really wanted to do is kind of turn this over to Brad Huff. He is a partner with Powell and Jones. So he will be coming up now to present the audit, and then I'll come back and do the recommendation.
So, yeah, it's 11:30. So good morning.
Good morning, sir.
We appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. Pam and Kristen did a great job getting us everything we needed to do the audit. So I'll just dive right into the presentation here. Our audits are conducted. And do you guys have a copy of the audit in front of you all? Okay. All right.
No. Did we get that in our board packet?
Yeah, it's in our packet.
Okay, yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, I was just gonna say some pages. All right, so I'm looking on page 5. I just wanted to show the audit is conducted in accordance with government generally accepted auditing standards and government accounting standards. The goal of an audit is to obtain an unmodified or clean opinion. This speaks less to the performance of the district and more to the quality of the records being kept by the finance department. And this means that the auditors believe that the information in a report with an unmodified opinion will be a reliable basis for decision making. As you can see in the second paragraph, there was an unmodified opinion in this one, which is a clean opinion. In addition, as Mr. Thomas and Pam said earlier, that there were no findings in our report. So that's good. The main items that are going to be included in the report in front of you guys are going to be like a management discussion analysis section. You have your basic financial statements. You're going to have the notes to those financial statements to kind of help put them in context. You're going to have a a schedule of your expenditures of your federal awards and your state awards, and we'll go through these. And then you'll have reports on internal controls as well. And so if you look on page 9, this is your management discussion analysis. For the sake of brevity, or for brevity, we're going to skip over this, but it is important to go back and read it. The management discussion analysis, or MD&A, it puts the financial statements in context, so you can kind of read through that and get a little more context for what's being said. If you would go to page 16, like Mr. McCall said earlier, government accounting standards, they require 2 separate presentations of your financial statements. One is more like a business type presentation that focuses on profit, and one is more of a cash management short-term presentation. The pages 16 and 17 are just watch out now, are more the business type presentation, but generally if you go to page 18, this is more what we're looking at. Page 18 shows your balance sheet, which shows each major fund that the district has, and what they own and what they owe, and then in the short term, and then the net of those amount, which is called your fund balance. The district maintains 5 major funds, which are presented below. One measure of an entity's health that we like to point out when we're giving presentations is if there were no change in operational spending in the district, how long would it take for your unassigned fund balance in your general fund to run out? That would be the amount that's not restricted for other things. And so if you look, in this case, the general fund's unassigned fund balance is about 10.4 million. That's at the bottom left of your page right there. And the operational spending last year was 7.7 million, which means that you'd be between 16 and 17 months of reserves if there were no income brought in to the general fund. And generally, we like to see about 4 months or so, and so that 16 or 17 months is good. Another thing to look at is if you look at your investments, it's not like your cash is just sitting around not getting anything. You guys have about 40 million in investments, which is earning some sort of interest as well. So it's good cash management there. You guys look at page 19. So this is your statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance. Basically this is the activities, what you guys spent and what you guys earned during the year. The majority of what was earned was intergovernmental revenues, such as appropriations and federal and state grants. And then what was spent was the 24 million. You spent about 24 million. A lot of that was on projects. You'll note that there was an increase in your fund balance at the end of the year, so like a net income there. That was primarily driven by a couple of things. One is your the adjustment in the fair market value of your investments, and then also the ad valorem taxes that you guys charge or receive. Sorry. So if you go to page 35, we'll look at your capital assets. Okay, this is on what you own. At the bottom of the page there in note D, so your capital assets stayed reasonably close to the last year overall, so there wasn't a large change in what you own there. Accumulated depreciation, which is like an estimate of how to recognize the expense of an object over its useful life, increased by about 320,000. Using accumulated depreciation as a measure of how much of your depreciable capital assets are used up, we see that about 70% of those are used up. You get about 30% of their remaining useful life, and that's a rough estimate, but just kind of one that you guys can look at. On the next page, we're looking at debt. In taking a look at long-term liabilities, that's going to be note F for you. It's important to note that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is the organization from which we receive the rules related to what and how things are reported, at times it makes standard changes, which results in changes in items that are being reported. For example, if you look at number one, there's been a change in the way that you guys report compensated absences, and compensated absences are, in the past, it's been basically, if business shut down today, what would you have to pay your employees for the amount of leave that they've accrued? so that there's a liability that's put on your government-wide financial statements for that. So there's been a change in that. Now it requires, what do you estimate will be paid out over the course of time? And so that change resulted in an increase in that liability from about last year, about 470 to the beginning amount of about 612 now. So there was an increased liability, which decreases fund balance. Another thing that you'll look at is your net pension liability. This is the liability related to the financial, the FRS. That there was an increase in that over last year. Again, another standard that was changed is related to what we call GASB 96, and this is related to IT agreements, like long-term IT agreements. And so as a result of that, now IT agreements in excess of 12 months, like subscription-based IT agreements, result in having a liability put on your books as well. And so that's that subscription liability at the bottom, which would not have been there in the prior year. And then the other thing to note is there were no notes payable or anything on there. So you can go to page 51. One of the requirements of government accounting standards is that you have a budget versus actual in your financial statements. As you can see, there was no spending that went over budget, so that was good. If you go to page 65, this is your spending of federal and state awards. This is a schedule of your spending of federal and state awards. You'll see in federal awards, you spend about $1.4 million, and then the state spending, there's about $13.6 million. This triggered what's called a single audit. So normally when we audit, we're going to audit the numbers on your financial statements. A single audit requires us to also audit compliance with major federal programs. And so if you look on page 77, we'll talk about what those major federal programs were. See, I think that might be page 79. Sorry, go to page 79 for the major federal programs. So the single audit is both for if you spend over $750,000 in state funds, it's a state single audit, and then over $750,000 in federal funds, it's a federal single audit. And so so that causes us to choose a major program. And for the federal program, it was the ARPA funding. This is a DEP ARPA grant. It includes the Lancaster Correctional Facility and the Live Oak Septic to Sewer Program grant. So we looked at the funds that were received for that and checked compliance with making sure that you guys were spending those funds in the way that the program intends it and everything, and there were no findings based on that. And so as far as we know, as far as we could tell based on our testing, you were compliant in all material respects. For the state funding, that's on page 82. The program that we looked at were the Springs and Alternative Water Supply grants. And there again, there were no findings in that. You were compliant in all material respects based on what we looked at. On page 77, this report talks about internal controls, what you guys have in place to prevent things like fraud or misreporting or what have you. And so we review internal controls, not for an opinion, but we found no material weaknesses in those internal controls. So there were no findings based on that as well. And then finally on page 91, the report on that talks about investment of public funds and everything. And if you were in compliance with state statutes based on that, and you were based on our procedures, we found no act or material non-compliance with that. Again, we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. Pam and Kristen did a great job of getting us everything. And so if you guys have any questions, let me know. Yes, sir, you may.
On the on listing the long-term IT agreements as a long-term liability, does it matter if they have like a 30-day, you can cancel them for any reason, provision or anything like that, or is it just if it's over 12 months?
From my understanding, and I can look more into that, but from my understanding, yes, sir. If it's over 12 months, then it needs to be reported. If it is, I would have to look at if there is an opportunity to, like if you can get out of that in 30 days or what have you.
This concludes your report?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the gentleman? Fantastic job. Thank you very, very much.
Yes, appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Pam, before you read the recommendation, I want to tell you, thank you for doing such an excellent job. Everybody gives you great line reviews on getting information, and obviously the controls and everything else that you're working through and working on and you're reporting and divvying out the money and everything else, which is a lot of money. You're doing an excellent job, and I want to say thank you. Appreciate you. You, that comes from leadership from you too as well. I appreciate it. We really do appreciate you guys. Thank you. You guys are awesome.
And it does take a team, and I have a great team. And the leadership that I have, you know, helps me to do it better. So, yeah. So our recommendation is for the audit committee to accept the fiscal year 2022-23 financial audit report from Powell and Jones CPA.
There's a motion on the table.
Motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from anybody? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Thank you very much, Ms. Pam. Appreciate it. I would entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting because I'm sorry. Let me see here.
Motion to adjourn everything.
Any other announcements?
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
The reason I volunteered, I'm probably the most heavily audited person over the last 10 years of anybody in this room. In a previous life, I had something like 23 audits in 9 years, all the way from inspector generals all the way to everything else you can imagine, including Powell and Jones. That's why I volunteered to help.
Thank you. You're awesome. I appreciate that. And if you want to, I can resign my
No, I want
position.
you to keep your position.
Okay, all right. Okay, no problem. All right. Any other announcements? Comments? Motion to adjourn. Second.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. We're gonna go over and have some lunch. Is it 5 minutes? We'll be ready. So if you guys don't mind, go wash your hands, use personal hygiene. We'll be ready to go in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Mother.
Thank you.